I'm just going to call the meeting to order for Kim. It's the finance meeting of the North Middlesex Regional School District. It is February 6th. It is 8:01 a.m. In attendance, we have Keenan Francois.
Here.
Mike Labossiere.
Here.
Brad Morgan.
Here.
Nancy Haynes.
Yes.
Ben Comier.
Here.
Gary Reese.
Here.
Robin Ivy.
Here.
And myself, Lisa Martin. We need to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes from the last finance subcommittee meeting.
Then that's seconded.
That is Mike with the motion and then Keenan with the second. For the minutes, Mike?
Yes.
Keenan?
Yes.
Myself, yes. All right. Let's see now. We'll wait for Kim. Are there any updates for the 26 budget? Let me get the agenda.
Nancy, do you have any updates? Kevin?
Yep, I can, in the packet, I dropped it in. Sorry, I was a little bit late, but I did include a updated budget for FY26. I do still have work to do on it. You can tell that just by looking at some of the deficits here and there. But I think we're generally in good shape. It's a lower total than last year. If you look at the budget summary, than last meeting, sorry. It's about $1.6 million right now that if we spend what I'm expecting we'll end the year with. Still looking really closely at the utilities. Those are running, this is a sort of unprecedented year. So I sort of expect that that's going to be a lot worse than we anticipated. And we also have, I have been signing approvals for long-term subs here and there. So I know there's going to be some more of that coming as well. I don't know if there's anything particular. I think we're still in pretty good shape. We don't really need to process a transfer yet, as the lines that have transfers associated with them right now still have plenty of funding available. So in actuality, I don't really need to move all the money that I moved into the assessment lines at the end of the budget, which is included in the special ed tuition section. So right now, I don't see that we have to process that transfer, which is, to move the money officially, because there is, if you look at some of these lines, you'll see that there is enough money in those sections to cover those transfers right now. So I guess that's all I have for FY26. I don't know if anyone else has any questions or anything to add.
Let's admit Kim from the.
Oh,
Robin, can you? I tried.
Yep.
I tried, but I couldn't get her to go to a panelist.
Sorry, she's moving over now.
Right. And I think she heard most of what you said, Nancy.
Okay, sure. If there's any further questions too, feel free to reach out after you get a chance to review the document.
Kim, we started the meeting. Minutes have been approved.
Yes.
And then Nancy was going over the 26 budget.
Yes.
It's all yours now.
I appreciate that. I was hearing what you were talking about with some of the transfers. I know you said when we have a chance to look at it, one of the things that I was interested in, Nancy, was at your look now. We've got from end of January look. I know you're just closing that out, but from now through June, do you see any categories, any of the line items that you're anticipating not fully spending at this point? Any areas that you see, anything that's 8 to 10% under budget at this point?
I think the biggest area that I anticipate having funding remaining will be in the out of district tuition lines at the end of the big report. And that's again due to a number of shifting tuition payments and students moving in and out of the district that ended up a lot lower than where we were in FY25. So that'll be the largest area. There's still room in some of the instructional support area. Again, I don't really know how much of the utilities on each transfer. So I would probably say that it's potential that there could be some left. The other areas are, again, some of these contracted services that are, if a student needs something, where you might see additional needs that I'm not anticipating right now. But in general, I would say in the instructional support, again, this is a result of all the shifts of staffing, and ended up with, I think, more salary line available in those areas. So I would say, again, number one would be the out of district area, and you can see that at the very bottom of the summary report. So right now, I would anticipate a decent amount left there. However, I don't know at what point we make that call as far as saying this is totally available. We should change something in the budget.
The other thing, too, that we have to consider is that moving into next year, we may start addressing some of the staffing needs that we have now early on that we have for next year as well.
That's why I was asking to see, as we get closer to the end of the year and hearing what everyone's saying about the class size, is there a way to anticipate some of the areas where there's funds available to start alleviating that in some way? That's your call, your area to say whether that's possible. And I don't know the mechanics of that. That's your profession. But if that's possible, that's something as an individual school committee member, I would love to have that discussion with the full school committee. It's your budget to see if that's possible or practical, because I hear that is a pressure point in all of the schools, that's something, if the budget is there and their need is there, it seems that would be well within your scope to do that with the budget that you have available.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd hate to at the end of the year say, oh, we could have done that. If we can start really looking at that, maybe at the end of this month, to see if that is a viable option to give some relief to the faculty and staff and the students.
Mm-hmm.
Other committee members, do you have thoughts on that?
I mean, that sounds good. That sounds reasonable to me. I'm not super well versed on all the details of budgets and moving money around to different areas and whatnot. But if there's money available and we can use it to relieve some of the lack of, some of the class size issues or other sort of educational issues that could be addressed by additional staff, then I'm all for that.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
I agree as well.
Okay. Keenan, any thoughts?
I don't. I might not have unmuted my mic. I said I agree. I agree with all those.
Oh, okay. All right. So if there's anything else on the 26th, we can certainly move into the 27. Reconfiguration, I think we can move on from that unless anyone has any comments.
Nope.
Okay. Cost savings and the previous underspending in the categories. I don't know, Kevin, if you have anything that you've been looking at since our last meeting. Any thoughts on that category?
No, and again, it's going to come down, as Nancy mentioned, trying to predict utilities is probably our biggest goal at the moment, because we're working with special education on the out of district tuition. I think we can more closely, budget for that next year, but also having that padding for any move-ins. But really that utility cost and trying to game that out over this year, and then what would that look like next year? That's definitely the number one thing on my mind as we try and figure out how to adjust any sort of lines to make sure we can cover that ahead of time rather than have to do big transfers next year.
Keenan?
Thank you. Specifically regarding utilities, I'm looking at the FY27 hearing detail right now on what we have budgeted for 27. I see you guys definitely left some headroom in there based on, I think this is FY25 actual and 26 adopted. But if we are still I don't know the ins and outs of how the utilities get charged or whatnot, but it doesn't seem like a lot of headroom. Do you anticipate needing to amend the 27 budget based on this year of what we have going on with utilities if we have another crazy year next year?
I think we'll know more when the January bills come in. Just December was higher than we thought. So if the January ones also kind of maintain that, then I think that's going to have to be something that we're going to have to look at, how we reallocate some things to get there. But yeah, we probably need another billing cycle to truly be able to kind of predict it out.
Sure. How, kind of rough percentage, how much did we overshoot December by expectation?
Seems to somewhere be in the 10 to 15% range. So.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think when we started drafting the budget, we were looking at what we had for activity for FY25 and where we were for FY26 so far. So you just make your best estimate for that. This year, if we were to know what we know now as far as these temperatures, I think we would have raised it a bit more. However, next year could be a warm winter. So it's a little hard to project.
So we budget for a cold winter and then we get a warm winter and then we've overspent.
Basically the way when I was starting to look at it, and Nancy and I sort of looked at it separately and then kind of came together just to kind of give me some experience for this. And whether it's my inexperience or whether it's the way to do it, I kind of looked at utility stuff first, and it was early in the year enough that I hadn't really come into, when I revisited it once bills came in, I was like, oh, this might not be so good. So maybe next year, you leave that to the later part of the budgeting process, and it's closer to accurate once you have more data.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I for sure wouldn't mind, I know the FY27 budget right now, I'm looking at the heating line alone, there's an $88,000 increase. I wouldn't mind if that was a little higher, but, I think in an effort to try to have a budget that seems manageable, we try not to go too high on some of these things so that, we don't leave money on the table, but also, something that's reasonable. So I feel like right now it's reasonable. Could we add a little more to it, knowing what we know right now? Maybe. But I think at the moment, we'll go with it and hope that that's close enough.
Yeah.
For next year.
If nobody else has any comments on the budget thing, I just have a question on one of the documents. The proposed budget by function code. I remember in one of the previous meetings, the proposed budget by function code had an additional column, which was basically a percent of the total increase column to sort of make it more obvious where the sort of biggest increases in the budget were in terms of dollar amounts compared to the total increase. Is that something that we could add into that before the public hearing on the 9th? Because it helped me sort of more easily contextualize where the actual big dollar amounts coming from. Because the substitutes line has a 62.54% increase, but that's only $88,000 because that's a smaller line item. So that those though that column was really helpful for me, and I think will be helpful when we're presenting the budget to the public to help them contextualize like where the increases are in terms of dollar amounts.
Yeah, that field's still in the spreadsheet. I just didn't include it in the printout. Sometimes I feel I appreciate it that you brought it up, because sometimes I feel like too many columns is too much, but I understand how that could be useful. So no problem.
Yeah, that one was really useful for me. So yeah, putting that back in would be much appreciated.
A question about the substitute line. What year did we increase that substitution line? Like we went from 60 to 100 or 70 to 100? What year was that? Because that happened to Mike in the past. And so I don't know what year we shifted. So that's why a substitute line would be a little higher.
I think this is the third year of the new rate.
Third year of that? Okay.
Yeah, I mainly just picked it because it was an example of a line where like the percentage increase was high, but the dollar amount compared to the overall dollar amount increase is low. So it's one of those ones where like, yes, we are spending more on substitutes, but in terms of the overall budget, it's not a huge factor because it's only $88,000. And, again, that's just it. I think it will be a helpful thing to look at and talk about.
I mean, on that same line, is there a reason why? I mean, I know reasons why we use substitutes, but is there, I don't know. I don't know.
It's a really hard thing to project because you don't, I think in the past it was more steady, like the amount of usage of substitutes and how they were used, and long-term subs, it was a little more predictable. It feels just a little bit more, I know the usage seems sort of all over the place right now. And I guess I don't mean all over the place. I just mean a little bit less predictable. It seems higher. Yeah. Since COVID, seems higher. It seems like there's just more staff going out. I don't know if we have a overall younger group. I don't want to make that judgment without really looking at the data, but it does seem like that in that area with every year I'm like, wow, we don't have enough. How can we not have enough? Mm-hmm. I bumped it up.
I definitely think this year we're experiencing a situation where we do have a few members that are out on maternity or paternity leaves, but also we have some staff members that have sick spouses at home that are also leading to an increased number of sick days. I know the high school has been hit pretty hard by that this year, but it is happening across the district as well. So when you have people that are going out for a long period of time, in some cases, again, it drives that substitute line up beyond what is just a day-to-day sickness where you're filling in for someone who, has a cold on a particular day. In some cases, we have staff members that are out, I think more so than usual this year, for a larger chunk of time.
I had a question with respect to the numbers that are coming out of the governor's office now, for what you had been predicting for the numbers for like the state aid and such. How have those changed the picture at this point?
So I think overall, if we're looking at specifically the 3.06 budget, both, we received a letter from all three towns, as the committee knows, asking that their increase not be north of 3%. And both Townsend and Ashby are, that has been met for both of those towns. Right now with the 3.06, Ashby is at a 0.33% increase, and Townsend is at a 2.63% increase. So they're both well within that frame. The issue is that Pepperell, who we are talking to later on today, is at 4.53 with the governor's numbers coming out. I will share with the committee that our health insurance numbers look really, really good. And we're putting the finishing touches on what that's going to look like as far as a final increase goes. And it looks like it's going to be minimal, if anything at all, to be quite honest with this group. The problem that or the unknowns or concerns that we still have is that the GIC number has not come in yet. There is, and now I think even more of a fear, at least on my end, that we may have more people switching to our insurance, which could eat up a chunk of that savings. And the other thing that is really an unknown, and again, with their, it's just the committee on the call. I can say that the GLP-1s have become a significant issue for health insurance. It's something that, if the insurance covers it, it's basically $30 a month. If the insurance doesn't cover it, it's about $450 a month for the person that may be on the medication. And it appears as though most plans, including our plan and GIC as well, are going to be dropping GLP-1s, which could, based on what the Mass Superintendents Association legal counsel is saying, could be viewed by the MTA as a change in plan design and thus subject to bargaining. So we have not been approached by the association at this point, but it is something that could potentially be subject to bargaining and take, again, any savings that we have and have an impact on it. Right now, I believe we have 278 people on our health insurance in the district, and of those people that are on those, 50 are on GLP-1s. Which is actually a small number compared to other districts. And the 50 doesn't necessarily mean that they're our employees. It could be a family member of someone that has our plan. But certainly, probably the lion's share are staff members. So again, going from what is currently, I believe, $30 a month to, the $450 range per month could be something that the union brings forward and could have an impact on our health insurance number. So again, just wanted to make everyone aware of that. We were thinking initially it would not be subject to bargaining, but it is. Or legal counsel is saying that it certainly could be, I should say. So the issue with all of this is that the hope on our end was that any savings that we realized from health insurance could be then parlayed into addressing our staffing concerns. And right now it's an unknown. So our number looks good. And we should have a final number, I believe, I'm pretty confident we'll have it by Monday. I think we're pretty close to being there now. But truth be told, we're looking at alternatives should the bargaining request come forward to see what can be done as far as an offer from the district that we'll share with the committee. Certainly when it's appropriate to do so. But that's a concern. We don't have the GIC number yet. That's a little bit of a concern as well. And then waiting to see how many people we have shifting onto our plans, who may be, again, on their spouse's plan, if that makes sense.
And when do you expect that to happen?
So that won't happen until open enrollment, which generally happens usually between April and May.
Okay.
So we're not going to have an idea as to how many people shift onto the plans until then. But as far as staffing goes, yeah, I'm pretty confident we have a pretty good idea as to what we need right now. And some of the issues that we have, just using like a hypothetical situation, kindergarten's a problem right now. Kindergarten's a problem, 7th and 8th grade are a problem. Those are our three hot spots. So K, 7, and 8. Kindergarten, there's more sections in first grade So when the kindergartners move to first grade, they'll be broken up into, like instead of 4 sections, there'll be 5. So the kindergarten class size next year should not be an issue. Kindergarten next year is unknown because we haven't had those students register yet. And we do have an idea that we're working on the middle school class size issue, where there could be the potential to hire 4 staff members in total, 2 between each building, to create a situation where there would be possibly 5 sections instead of 4 sections in the 7th and 8th grade, which would again take those class sizes of 31 or 30 in 4 sections and now spread them out over 5, which would address that issue. And that's something that could potentially be addressed this year, towards the end of the year once we have a final number. And the other important staffing piece that we're looking at is someone to really come in and support our special education sub-separate programs, support students, provide professional development, so that we're able to make sure that those programs are as robust as possible, meeting the individual needs of each student, but also making sure that that they're being pushed academically to the best of each individual's ability, but also making sure that the staff are getting enough support and training so that we can retain them and that we're not losing them.
Well, it's obviously promising for the school side to get some relief for the students. This will be unpopular with everybody as the words come out of my mouth, but as numbers look more promising on the school side, I know I said that we could look at each of the numbers moving towards some of the optimum side, with a stretch for the municipalities and then a little bit of the stretch for the schools to get to their optimum as well. As the numbers come in, I think you probably remember my first day on the school committee with the budget vote. I drove the number down. Anything that we can do to get closer to driving that 400 down, to get closer to the percentage of the town, not just the 3% per town, but that percentage number. I'm going to say it wrong, with the 2.46 or 64, whatever that number was. I know that Pepperell is in a difficult position. Townsend is as well. I don't know as intimately with Ashby, and still get the goals of the school achieved as well. I think that would be appreciated. I watched the meeting in Townsend the other day. It's definitely not a great situation. So as those numbers keep coming in from the state and the insurance numbers, anything that comes off of that 400 and still can achieve the goals that we're trying to do with the class size, I think would be well received by everybody. So whatever can be done there, I'd appreciate a look at it. I don't know how the other members here feel about it and what we can bring back to the group as a whole. And I know it's hard when you've got moving targets to look at, to totally solidify it right now.
Yeah. So it's something that we could potentially do, because we obviously realize that Pepperell especially, that number's a problem, and it's going to be a problem. And Nancy and Kevin have worked very hard on this budget, and I can certainly let them explain it a little more, but we can certainly share with the committee that's something that we feel that we can do. And again, I don't know what it's going to leave us as far as addressing all of the class size issues that we have, is potentially drop from a 3.06 to a 2.73. And that's basically a reduction of $222,000. It puts Townsend even lower, Ashby at almost nothing, but it still leaves Pepperell at, I think, a 3.97% assessment. It's below 4. It's below the 4.53 that we have right now. certainly it's something that we can consider to look at. Just to be honest, it's not something that we could prepare in enough time for Monday night's hearing at this point. But it is something that we're looking at as a possibility. But keeping in mind that $222,000 that we would be basically moving back and taking out of the budget would, for all intents and purposes, be upwards of 3 staff members, 3 classroom teachers that we would not be able to, fill. Not to say that we may not have money elsewhere, but that alone would be about 3 teachers if you're looking at teachers and benefits combined.
From my perspective, and then I'll let Keenan and Lisa speak, what I'd rather see, if possible, is as the numbers have been coming in from the state being unknown to us when you were setting the budget, if those numbers gave you flexibility with the per pupil numbers, if that was higher than what Nancy and Kevin were factoring in, and that gave you flexibility, I would say a reduction there, not a reduction on what you were figuring in for the staff and the education quality. So maybe it's not 225, maybe it's whatever those numbers are. And I just saw them come out. So I don't know what that means with what was figured, and I know it's too soon from when they came out to our meeting to Monday to try to unpack that. But I think going to the hearing on Monday and saying, this is what we had prepared to present to you, here's what we're looking at in time for town meetings, which we have a little bit of time for to work on. That's what I think, my opinion, one person, might be the delta of the difference. And I don't know where your 225 comes from, but my perspective is any plus up money, things that we weren't anticipating, any of the savings off the insurance that are more than what you thought it might be, right? So if simple numbers, right? We thought it was going to be $50 more, but it's only 37. So you have that difference. That's what I think you reduce it by. The unanticipated savings by insurance being less than what we thought it was, or per pupil being more than what it was, or transportation being more than what it was, something like that. So sharing in what was unanticipated on our end, sharing that back with the municipalities. Because I think
Nancy or Kevin, sorry, Kim. Sorry.
I think you came in with a pretty fair, tight budget. And so if there was something new and unanticipated, that's where my thought process is. And now I'll turn it over. I saw Keenan's hand first, then Lisa, then Mike's head nodding. So I'll go in that order.
Yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate what you guys have done with this 3.06. I'm actually I didn't know how the assessments were or factored in with Ashby being so low and Pepple being so high. I didn't know that the delta was that big between the two. I suppose my question is more so for Lisa, because I know you're more in tune with what's going on in Pepple. If we don't drop it down all the way to 2.47 and say we do the 2.76 as Brad mentioned, do we think even if they're over the 3% by whatever it was, 0.97%, 1%, that they would have any realm of possibility to accommodate that without having to go through, because obviously they have to choose whether they want an override or not. I don't know if you're familiar enough with what the town's financial situation is, because regardless, they're going to tell us 3%, whatever, but maybe they have a little bit to, give away.
Brad and Nancy and Kevin are talking to them this afternoon or this morning. As Brad had indicated, they know their financial climate better than I can predict. But what I have been hearing from them is that they're in trouble. They don't have enough for even the 3%. And so they're looking to do some kind of override. Now, does it involve us? I'm not sure at this time. And that would be Kevin and Nancy and Brad meeting with them and talking a little more to see what they're comfortable with. But indication is that they need an override just for some of their town services. If that answers your question, Keenan.
Yeah.
No, and honestly, I think that we all feel pretty strongly that we do, if we can, absolutely want to help the towns. And we don't, we want to address our needs, but we're not looking to really do anything more than address our needs. So if there is, and I can certainly let Nancy and Kevin address, if the governor's numbers provide us with some flexibility. The governor's numbers really, to be frank, didn't really help us out all that much. So I can certainly let them talk about it. But that being said, in that looking at health insurance and what we were projecting versus what it actually is an unanticipated savings for the district. But the concern is that for me, and I think for all of us, is that shift onto our plan, and then potentially having some of the GLP-1 piece be subject to bargaining, which could eat away at some of that savings. Not all, but it could certainly eat away at some of that savings. So I'll let Kevin and Nancy, or if Michael wants to talk first.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that, because of the sort of uncertainty of the possibility of savings or like how much they're going to be, I think that I think that coming to the budget hearing with here is our baseline, and then here is all the things that could shift based on things that we don't know right now. And basically saying that if we have any unanticipated savings, we could apply that towards reducing the increase in the assessment for the towns. And I think that message would be the easiest to sort of sell in terms of getting all of the towns on board and saying, okay, here's our very reasonable budget, and here's the possibility of further reductions based on unanticipated possible savings. But we don't want to assume we're going to get those savings, because then if we don't get them, now we're in a bind and that's a problem. So I think that coming with this approach makes the most sense.
Yes, we can go down, we can't go up.
Yeah, exactly.
My question has to do with the E&D, more so in our budget, because we do have that policy, the fiscal reserves, that we need to look at. We have to probably decide if we're going to apply it or not apply it this year. So I don't think, because we're using 2 million, correct?
Yes.
This year?
Yes.
Does that break the policy?
But also a portion of that is supporting the transfer to capital.
Okay.
So we added back in the capital the capital stabilization transfer. So if you take out of the E&D, a portion of that is for that capital. You're probably pretty close to what the policy says. Maybe Kevin and I can confirm that exactly. But I'm pretty sure we'll be very close to what will be considered acceptable and leaving a certain amount in E&D, given that factor. Also, how our capital line items are considered with regards to that policy might also be. So in theory, we bumped that up a little bit. I think it was around 170,000 for building capital for next year. Is a portion of that considered supplemented with that E&D number, and then just the delta from there would be what we'd be looking at. I guess these are sort of areas where we're going to have to look a little closer at the actual language of what's in the policy versus those items.
Right. We will have to post, Lisa, a meeting after the budget hearing, our next meeting, to review the policy and implementation, and discuss when that actually gets implemented.
Okay.
It just got handed off to us at the last meeting.
That's a good.
Brad.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that we're prepared to do that or where we're looking at. So, all right. Sounds good.
Yeah, and if I could just jump on about the revenue. So the revenue documents have the governor's numbers in them with some tweaks, I would say. The Chapter 71, which is the biggest number, we used exactly the governor's number for these calculations. The Chapter 71, Chapter 70, we used the governor's numbers. Chapter 71, we used an estimate of our transportation costs for next year, and 85% of the amounts over greater than 1.5 miles. So the students that are more than 1.5 miles. So we used a little bit, and we also used some McKinney-Vento, which is a reimbursement for homeless transportation that comes in the following year. So we used 150,000 for that as well. So we've got a little bit close to what's in the governor's proposal right now is really this year's number. They don't have what our spending is for next year, so they don't have a way to, for the FY26, they don't have a way to actually give us the real number. So we did a projection on that I think I'm pretty comfortable with. We're using more school choice funding than the governor's number for school choice and charter or estimates. We're definitely using a little bit more than we anticipate, but we do have funding in the school choice revolving, so it's not going to be a problem. I just wanted to bring up the differences. We looked at the assessment portion, which is if you're looking at the cherry sheets, which I can certainly send out to everybody or share with you. There's an assessment for charter schools and school choice students that leave district to go to charter schools. And those are based on estimates also, but are very close to collectively what we budgeted. So I'm not making any changes there, even though there's a little bit more in one line versus the other, but we're very close. So all in all, I think the governor's numbers do help. We also came in very close to our estimates for enrollments. So I don't see any problem. The issues with the changes between the towns is not really related, in my mind, too much to enrollment. It's mostly related to the minimum local contribution, which we talked about. We used a 3% for each of the towns, and the towns came in much different than that, which you can see in the presentation for the public hearing, but I'll just rattle them off for you. Ashby's minimum local contribution increased by 3.77, Townsend by 3.31, and Pepperell's by 6.59%. So their minimum local contribution swing was quite a bit different, and that's really where I believe we're picking up the extra cost in the way the numbers fell on the percentages by town. That's why it makes it so hard, I think, to project those, because we don't have all the numbers that they're using. In fact, the municipal growth for the towns is not even on the website yet, but they're using it for the calculation. So I've been trying to find that. Hopefully it'll be posted shortly. In any case, those are the numbers that are impacting and why it's creating that difference between the towns. As far as enrollment, we projected around 2865 total, and we were at 2876, I think. I can't read my own writing here, but something close. So really from the percentages between towns, pretty minor changes. There were some changes. Ashby went down slightly, but they're not as big a portion of the district. So that does impact it, but not as significantly as the minimum local contribution. So in any case, it's probably more than you want to hear about it, but there's a one pager that we'll probably post once we get through the public hearing, and we can explain it a little further when we do that presentation.
It's actually helpful because when you read the articles that come out, the advocacy articles, it looked a little more promising that we might have had a little bit more, but you predicted it so well that you've been doing it so long that you got it right on. So I was just a little more hopeful, I guess. Superintendent, and then Lisa.
So I did just want to add the fiscal reserve policy. it's no secret that, as I've said before, that I would prefer to move away from that if at all possible. To be honest, I don't think I don't think it's a policy that we can follow until there's some type of reform around Chapter 70 funding. Only because if we remove that $2 million from this year's budget,
Superintendent,
yes,
I'm just gonna hold you on that just because we didn't have that on the agenda for today.
It is on the agenda.
It's on the agenda, Kim.
yeah,
I added.
I'm
I thought
sorry.
we were just talking about it before Nancy spoke.
Yep. I believe I
You
added
update it? Okay,
I-
sorry.
I did update it. I'm sorry. During the last school
Okay,
committee
I
meeting.
printed this one before, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, that's why I said we'll put it on the other agenda. So, okay, let's talk about it then, because I'll talk about my opinion of it too.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so
Going.
certainly in the past, it hasn't been consistent, but some of the towns have used their free cash before for their budgets. And that is, for all intents and purposes, what E&D is for us. It is, our free cash. That's how Mars looks at it, the Mass Association of Regional Schools. And I would like to move away from it at some point because it isn't really something that you can depend on for annual costs, and really should be used more for one-time type costs. I don't see us being in that situation right now because I can't imagine what we would have to do to our budget to actually comply with this policy if it were passed as is right now this year. It would be we'd be removing $2 million. We'd be putting $2 million back in and somehow cutting $2 million from our budget, which would be catastrophic. It would make this year's class sizes seem palatable, and then next year we'd be in a much worse situation. So I do think it's something that it's a goal to strive for, because free cash should be used, in my opinion, for one-time uses, emergencies. But to fund the budget year after year, I don't think is a good practice. But in order to move away from that, we need help from the state, and we need to be funded properly. We can't be in the top 10 for the most underfunded school districts in the Commonwealth and not use our free cash.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Mine is not around that, so if somebody else has a question, mine was asking about the cherry sheets more.
Kevin?
Kevin, you're muted.
Mute.
You're on mute, Kevin.
I hate when I do that. Wednesday I was at a presentation on sort of that fiscal outlook of the state, and I have an email into the gentleman who did the presentation for some clarification. But from my understanding is the surplus tax for the first couple of years, what they were doing was try and build their own reserves from that. But that's what were allowed us, for example, last year to go from the $60 a student to $150 a student. That's not going to happen this year because they actually did use quite a significant part of it for the operating budget for Chapter 70. And what little supplemental will be over, because the other part of that law was for transportation. So they're going to address transportation needs with that. So I don't think there's not a very good chance that we're going to get that surprise bump to 150. It might happen. It might not. But so the presentation made it sound like we should be continuing to maintain healthy E&D, and know that we may be reliant upon it until that cycle sort of sorts itself out. So to Superintendent Morgan's point, long term, I think it is a good goal. Short term, it probably has the potential to be a little bit more damaging than even we might have considered. But again, I just heard this presentation on Wednesday. I have some follow-up questions out there. Nancy and Brad and I haven't had a chance to really talk about this too much. But that is a feeling that's out there. So we might want to be a little bit more cautious, given that there might be some other forces that we just haven't been told about yet. And, to try and implement it for next year would probably be even tougher than we already think it might be.
Also, I think so.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry. So I was just looking at the DIB. I know we haven't officially adopted DIB yet. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So looking at the current wording of it, it does use the word should, when we're talking about using it regularly as a revenue source. So, should is not shall. And I think that it's worth pointing out that, like, it would not, it would go against the intent of the policy to continue using E&D for this year, but it doesn't, I don't think, necessarily violate the policy. And maybe that's a question for an attorney, a counsel to solidify that. But I think that given the situation, given how trying to reduce $2 million from our budget would be catastrophic, and I agree with that assessment. It is, I think, reasonable to say that for the FY27 budget, we will continue doing this thing that we are not thrilled about and isn't generally recommended best practice, but is basically our only viable option for right now. And we should have the goal of moving towards, what the policy specifies. But I don't think it would be, again, I don't think, based on the wording of the policy, I don't think our current budget would be necessarily like a violation of it. It would just be, well, we're not doing what we should try to do, but there are reasonable circumstances sort of making it that we have to do this, if that makes sense.
That is specifically why when I got a hold of the policy, I changed the words. If you're looking at the version that I had done, well, I think it was Randy's version, and then I did a policy of it, and I changed some words, and then I think she redid it, but I had specifically taken out shall and put should.
Yeah, and that's the one that I'm looking at that says should not, and I think that again, that makes sense, and I think that means that if we, again, I don't think that our current proposed budget would constitute a violation of that policy.
Right.
It would be. Again, it's sort of the policy dictates a goal and says we should do this, but it doesn't say shall.
Right. I think in one area I had put ideally.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that stayed in it. Keenan.
Mine is in two-part statement and question. Regarding DIB, personally, I don't. I mean, I used this phrasing with another member, not on this subcommittee recently. Ignoring, if the parameters are ignored, then they might as well not exist. Even with the language that kind of gives us the wiggle out room, I don't actually see a purpose for this policy to even exist until, like Superintendent Morgan said, we have some kind of reform to where we are not actually dependent on E&D. To follow that up, for Brad or for Nancy or Kevin, whatever we have in E&D balance right now, 3.5 whatever million, not including what we're about to spend for 27. Relative to other, it's probably been asked before, but relative to other school districts, what do other districts typically retain year over year in their E&D?
Nancy, I don't know if you have. I don't know.
I don't have
ahead.
that data. I don't have that data offhand, but it may be something that's available online, depending on how.
I'm sure it is, and I could.
Yeah,
I don't want to put work on you. That's the research I could do myself. That's just out of curiosity.
No, that's okay. We'll take a look. It's a good question.
I mean, I know, for instance, that Neshoba Tech has historically used all or the majority of it on an annual basis for their budget. Just because, of funding, of a lack of funding, which again, their lack of funding as a CTE school is very different from our lack of funding, is a regional comprehensive. So, but that's something that they have done and they've used E&D. I do know that most districts use E&D, I just don't know for certain whether if they use a significant portion of it like we do.
Sure. Thank you.
Lisa?
My question is, so if if we don't apply DIB to this budget, is there a way, and this is probably asking Kevin to do more of this, analysis next year to see how close we got to doing it? Do you know what I mean? Like to see like what areas we could change, or it'd be analysis after the fact kind of thing. I wouldn't say run it against like 3 budgets or back budgets, but maybe this budget.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, once the final numbers are in September, I can definitely take them and run side by side. And that document that I know Kim has, and I think others have, about the last 3 years of the over. I mean, again, I don't really count last year because we cut spending at such an early point in the year. Last year's kind of an outlier, FY25, but if I compare it against 23 and 24 and 26, you start to get a better idea of historically where we can be closer to where we should be.
Because I know one year we dumped all of E&D or a lot of it, and so that would not be a year to do an analysis on it. All
right. So Keenan, just to reflect on your thoughts about like if we're not going to follow it, why have it? I think one of the things that helps is it kind of gives that stretch goal, that aspirational goal of like where do we want to be, and as we all transition and move, kind of gives that thought process, that longitudinal of like if this were Nirvana, like what would it look like? Depressing at times because we're not getting there, but what does a healthy system look like for an administration, for a municipality? So I get it. It's like, yeah, why are we doing this? We're never going to get there, but hopefully we will. Hopefully something changes. But I get your point. Like we haven't been there for such a long time.
Yeah, and I think that's probably just it is probably just an ideological difference between us. Like to me, if we want to have a goal like that, that's a goal, not a policy. And
right.
Even in this, committee, we have, a weird way of doing goals, but that's something that like right. That mismatch needs to be addressed at, a later date, like during an organizational meeting or something like that. But
no, I hear you. Like in these days, our policy is we don't run in the red.
Yes.
Yeah. In theory, I mean, if you're putting in as much as you're using to cover the next year, I mean, that's, if that's the case, then, mathematically, that's the same as the goal. I think from my standpoint is you can't do that in a year, right? You would have to say, like, over the course of 5 years, can we get to that? Sure. Can I do that in a year? Not without significant effects to, classroom teachers, to, building lines, to capital projects. Like it's too much to jump a year that way. But if you're saying, can we get there by 2030? There's a good chance we could get there by 2030. But that's up to the committee to what that implementation timeline looks like.
Yeah, and that was the second half of what I was going to say. I think, this body, not necessarily the administration, but the body of school committee, having something like a 5-year plan would be, excellent and amazing for us. But with the committee makeup changing so frequently, so many, 3 terms are expiring this year, another 2 next year. There's no saying what, and then obviously evolving fiscal situations. There's no saying what this looks like even, 6 months from now, let alone 5 years.
It's hard to make a 5-year plan when you don't know what's coming even next year. Like you can make a 5-year plan and then immediately jettison it the following year because the situation changed and you just wasted all that effort making a 5-year plan that's no longer relevant. So it's, it's sort of a, but I do think that having the policy it worded the way it is, I think makes sense because again, it doesn't lock us in. It gives us a guiding principle. And like it you know, again, you can sort of agree or disagree about whether that means it should be a policy or not. But I kind of think that having, like, making policies is one of the very sort of specifically deep, like outlined jobs of the school committee. And I think that, putting it in a policy solidifies it, makes it like this is actually our goal, even if the membership of the committee changes. Like, unless the future committee decides to eliminate that policy, it's still the policy of the committee. And I think that having it be there and having it be sort of a guide for this is what we should be aiming for. And if we can't do it because of circumstances, then we can't. But if we can, then we should. And again, that word should keeps popping up. And I think that is what we should be striving for. And I think that's why the policy, I think, does make sense. But I get Keenan's point about, like, well, it's a policy that we almost have we have very little control over whether we're actually going to be able to attain it or not, I think is the issue.
So should we be taking a formal vote that we say to not adopt at this time?
I don't.
As in, like, a recommendation of this committee?
Yeah.
I think we could do a recommendation that we don't apply or suspend the policy this year.
Well, if the policy doesn't exist yet.
Well, I think we did approve it. I think it did get approved.
We did? I might have missed that.
Yeah, you had left the meeting already.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not in effect yet, but we will be. But yeah, I do think that does make sense, actually, is that, we maybe just recommend to the full committee that, like, despite the fact that we adopted this policy and given the fact of the wording of it and that it's a should, we should basically say formally, like, yes, this is our goal. And yes, we are going to try to take strides towards meeting that goal each year as we sort of do new budgets for subsequent years. We reduce our reliance on E&D until we get to that place where we're only using it for capital expenditures and whatnot, and not using it for the regular operating budgets.
Sure. I would agree with that. Would you like a motion, Kim?
Yeah. My question was, do we need to make a formal vote to recommend that, or do we just discuss it and say that that's what we recommended?
I would recommend that we vote on it, only because we did have a committee member at the last meeting mention the policy and mention potentially cold turkey, going cold turkey. So,
right. So yes, Keenan, I will entertain a motion.
Let me think of how to word this. I move, not a motion. Is appropriate language that we not adopt the policy?
That we recommend implementing the policy in FY27.
Okay. We do not recommend implementing the policy.
No, we would recommend that we start to implement the policy in FY27. Right?
Or maybe call it a pause.
Pause.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe that's not the appropriate word.
in my head, it's pause implementation of the policy in FY27.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. I don't know.
Or suspend. How about suspend?
Suspend
the policy.
Yeah. Suspend? Yeah. Everyone cool with suspend?
Sure. I'm good with suspend.
Yeah.
I move that the finance subcommittee suspend or recommend the suspension of policy DIB for FY27.
Seconded.
Mike, did you second that?
Yes.
Okay. Roll call vote. Keenan Francois.
Yes.
Mike Labossiere.
Yes.
Lisa Martin.
Yes.
And Kim Craven, I'm a yes as well. All right. So I have written to Robin that I have absolutely lost my mind because I opened and
You-
printed what says updated.
You have not lost your mind.
Okay.
So, oh, sorry, I had my, I was searching for it. So I updated it, but I keep two folders and I didn't place it in that folder. So,
Okay.
just when you think you're confused, you're not. It's probably because it's my fault.
Okay.
So.
So someone else has to do the agenda because my agenda is different than the one that you all are looking at.
All right, so it is under new business.
Okay.
This one is so,
The only thing that was added, I'm sorry, Kim, was what I was doing. I was going over the minutes from the last school committee meeting, and you asked that be added to the agenda, and I didn't remember that.
So I thought that I had, but then I didn't see it. So I'm like, okay, everybody gets busy, so we'll do it at a future meeting. And I didn't want to say, I didn't want to say that out loud. So I figured you just got busy and couldn't add it.
No, there are lots of moving pieces. We have this today. Obviously the hearing on Monday. I have a policy committee meeting on Tuesday that I'm preparing for. So I apologize. I updated it and reposted it. And online you'll see it does say when I updated it, and I asked what was added. The only thing that was added was the DIB policy.
Okay.
I apologize.
So no problem. Because I was like, I know that I know I printed the one that said updated.
My defense, there were the minutes were a lot from the last meeting. So
yes, well, and that's what I thought, and I knew we had a lot going on. I'm like, okay, she just didn't get to update it with that. That's fine. We can do it at a later date. It wasn't
teamwork.
To me, that was like not the most pressing thing that we had to do today. But under the FY27 piece, we do have the hearing on Monday. I will be remote. So I will be there from the West Coast.
Yeah, we have, so I reached out to the towns, and I believe all the town managers will be in attendance in person, but we do have some board members that are attending remotely. So we are doing everything we can to make sure that the hearing runs smoothly. We think we have a good plan. Lisa and I met earlier in the week with Jeremy, and we are going to, on Monday, early Monday, go through everything. So there should be no issues, Kim, with the hearing.
And I'm available beforehand if you want me to call in or do anything like that. So just text me.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since we did a hybrid model, and it's never run very smoothly because we just don't have the infrastructure, but we are working on that. And Jeremy and I are pretty confident that it should go off without a hitch. So, and I have drafted a script so that it's just easier for the chair to follow because she is going to be looking at who's in the room and online. So between the two of us, I think we have a good plan. So we'll see.
We do have a good plan. I think Jeremy and Robin have both thought of all possibilities. And
well, I wouldn't go that far, but I'm not that confident, but
all possibilities we can think of at this time.
At this time, yes. So
reasonably anticipated.
Yes, thanks, Mike. Exactly.
Keenan?
Regarding the hearing, I think I heard mentioned earlier that the presentation, like presentations made, I don't see it in the folder. I don't know if that's maybe I misheard or.
So the presentation we normally don't put in the folder just because it speaks specifically. All it is a slideshow based on the budget message. So it's nothing that's new. It's just consolidated into again into a slideshow, and it's something that quite honestly that we're still working on. Just to make sure that, as we make some small adjustments, that the adjustments reflect in the presentation itself.
Sure.
And anything that is changed, we will let the committee know it's an adjustment from what the actual budget message says.
Okay, fantastic.
Yep.
So Keenan, if you look at it this way, superintendent and his team are bringing the budget forward to the school committee and saying, this is what our plan is. We as a school committee get it after that and take it and develop it, and then we'll take it to the towns. So
Yeah. I just didn't know if I was like missing it somewhere or if I was looking in the wrong place. So yeah, I understand.
and it is, again, taking the narrative and putting it on slides.
And if it's okay with you, Lisa, I can share the script once I've completed it and add it to the packet. You all can just see what how the structure is and the flow. Yeah. And then, you know, if anyone has any recommendations, you know, that way you'll have an understanding or an expectation of how it goes with public comment and a vote to open the hearing, a vote to close the hearing, because there's two separate hearings. So we'll start with the school choice hearing, and then we'll close that hearing. Then we'll open the budget hearing, close the budget hearing, and then go into the regular school committee meeting.
Keenan, we were doing our part after this step last year.
Okay, that makes sense. I had the timelines all messed up. I don't even remember.
I could tell that when you were asking that question. Yeah.
Let alone last year.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the one thing that is available that was not in the superintendent's message is obviously the governor's proposal and therefore the revenue projections. So those are the things that are going to be new because we didn't have those numbers. And there's, you know, again, we're not changing drastically the 306 budget at this moment. So it didn't make sense to do an entire another presentation of the message, given that we're, you know, not changing the total percentage increase. There are some slight changes, minor. We'll kind of review some of those, but in all, I'd say the biggest change will be that these revenue projections are available. And again, seeing what the impact on the towns is the only thing that will be new for the hearing. I guess that's it.
All right. Do we need to set a next meeting?
Why, yes.
When would we like that to be?
We have school committee on the 24th. I don't think we need to meet again before that, but maybe.
On the 24th of February?
Isn't that school vacation week? Is that school vacation week?
The vacation week is the week before. Yeah, we have a virtual meeting is set for that.
So Keenan and I think still have extra meetings. I think we're the only two that, because that sounds like now it's a wrong week for school committee. Maybe it's not.
Looking at my calendar here, school committee is usually the third week of the month. That is the fourth week of the month, probably because of that school break.
That's exactly it.
So, which week are you looking at again?
February the 24th. So that's the week of the 22nd. That's when we have school committee again.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one on the 24th of February.
I may not have added it yet. So
I don't want to be the last authority, but I am 1000% certain because I put these in during the meeting after we voted on it. I put them in my calendar immediately.
No, you are right. It is the 24th, but I may have not added it yet. So there was a problem with Zoom, and for whatever reason, I don't know why, but it was adding meetings. So I went in and deleted those meetings, and then I'm updating as I proceed, the ones that I was catching. So we absolutely have a virtual meeting on the 24th for school committee.
I just don't update my calendar. I just don't do my calendar. I wait for Robin to give me my.
Yes. So
this will be just to pipe in. This will be the last meeting of the committee before the adoption of the budget, I'm assuming. I don't believe there'll be another one until the March 10th adoption. So this will probably be the direction for what we hopefully have a lot of the answers that we talked about today
Yes.
at that meeting.
So if you like to meet on Fridays, you could do the 27th of February or the 6th of March, which is before the budget adoption. Just depends. Those are Fridays anyways.
I can't do the 27th.
Oh, darn.
I can't
So
either, actually.
I'm sorry that everyone is kind of beholden to me here and my awful schedule. I can do Wednesday mornings and before 10, and I can do Friday mornings before 10. I could do a Monday morning before 10. I'd rather not, but I could make that happen.
So I know it will be horribly received, but if we're meeting on the 24th with the school committee, should we have our finance committee the next morning?
Wednesday.
That just fell over. we can just stay over, Brad. We can just stay awake the whole night.
No, I can do that. I can do that.
Yeah. I want to give enough time in case there's something that we need. I don't want to back it up to right before the final meeting. Like I just don't, it's too close if we do it the Friday before our Tuesday meeting.
I can do Wednesday the morning after.
2:25. It can't be any worse than having the public hearing in person the day after the Super Bowl, right?
True.
No, I didn't think about that, but
It's going to be a very long day for some of us, but that's fine. We're strong. Okay, so I have the 25th at 8 a.m. I'll take care of that.
Awesome.
All right.
I think about it, at least at these meetings, we only go, what is it? We're about 20 minutes over instead of 2 hours. So,
It's all perspective, right?
And I always actually plan that our meeting is ending at 9:15, and I was 2 minutes late. So we're doing pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. You guys are the admin, well, and my peers on the committee too. I think you're doing great work in extremely trying times. You guys are pulling it off. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the support.
Yeah.
I'm going to ditto that to the admin and everyone and Robin. And I think that during hard times, we've come through it and we'll do it again. Let's hope that they just get better going forward.
Right.
And I know I'm asking a lot for you guys to carve out a little bit more, but every little bit helps. Yep. And you guys have been on the other side of that, where every little bit helps. So.
We'll work it. We'll keep working it.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Right. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All right. Roll call. Lisa Martin.
Yes.
Mike Labassiere.
Yes.
Keenan Francois.
Yes.
Kim Craven. I'm a yes.
Great.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Go Pats.
Go Pats.
Bye.